So now we'll get into equity gaps. So first, to acknowledge that equity gaps, you may have also heard the phrase achievement gaps, and that we're trying to get away from that language. And when Anthony joins us and talks about asset versus deficit thinking, you'll recognize that this is an example of those differences. So equity gaps are there to define just what we were talking about before. You know, what's the result that you got? What was the result that you want students to get? And what's that mathematical calculation between there? But with a lot in life, the devil is in the details. So what metric are we dealing with? Which groups are we looking at? What number are we going to set? You know, how are we going to do that equation? And each of these three carry a lot of key decision points with them. So I'll take them a little bit out of order and start with the comparison figure. Excuse me. So remember, the definition of assessment, or a key part of it, is comparing your result to a standard. So your child looks a little sick, you take her temperature, what do? You do the math. How above 98.6 is the measurement that I got? You know, if you take the thermometer out and it says 87, you knew that was a bad result. You got to try again, etc. So that's 98.6 is normal. You know, that's kind of the stasis baseline. So that came from a very logical scientific place. So some standards are typically just the average. So for example, 72%, and I didn't look up these numbers specifically, Dave probably has them memorized, but the average course success rate across the college in the ballpark of 72%. You could also set a standard as the best scoring group. Middle college and accelerate college students score very highly, and I bet it's even higher than 92%. So should that be our standard? We've got a group of students who can hit that. Shouldn't everybody hit that? Or the largest group, maybe that is transfer students or students between the ages of 23 and 28, and maybe they score 84%. You need to pick your standard of what you want all students to achieve. But it needs to be contextualized, and it needs to make sense for your local environment. And so we'll get into that a little bit when we go through program review. We do know that even when we chose groups for this, it wasn't that we were comparing everybody to 70%. We know that CTE courses have a different average. Health professions courses have a different average. Developmental education courses have a different average. So across those different buckets, we already knew that one number wasn't going to fit everybody. But this brings us back to fall convocation when we had Dr. Tia Brown McNair join us, and this is some of what she talked about, that when you have that, what was the book, Equity Walk to Equity Talk, is about reducing those gaps. And so having a gap means you've got that threshold defined. But she cautioned us about not being thoughtful about choosing what that number is. But if you do it on the group average, the best scoring group, the larger group, that's kind of reinforcing any kind of bias that already exists in your system and how students are able to navigate it. So the group average, particularly if you're, you know, for example, white students are our biggest racial and ethnicity group, so their rates are going to kind of overpower the college average. So if we use the college average, it's elevating their performance as a standard, and maybe that's not the best way to go about it. She also felt very strongly that the number should be chosen by the educators. You know, it's not something that me as the assessment manager or a VP or somebody should say, everybody's going to hit this standard. You're the ones in the classroom and know what you want your students to achieve. And that's where it should come from. So it's not that it's going to be, well, the white students score 70, so we want everybody to get to 70. It's like, no, we want everybody to get to 76 or whatever it has. And we're still kind of in the middle of having that conversation as an institution.